Okay, Rabotai, we are on 4A1, and we are still getting the incredible benefit of hearing from the wisdom of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. He's on fire, knocking him down. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, kol nהיה baruch.
I just heard the class.
You just heard the class. Okay. Let's go. 4A1. Or Dalet Amud Aleph. The Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi teaches. Nashim chayavot mikra Megillah. Ladies are obligated in the mitzvah of mikra Megillah. Why? She'af hem hayu beoto anes. Because they were also involved in this miracle. Now, this is a very interesting concept. This idea. What are we really banking off of when we tell you that women are obligated in this mitzvah? There's a general rule that says Nashim Piturot, mitzvot, they're patur on mitzvah taseh, on any positive commandments, shazeman gerama, that the time causes that mitzvah. So how come your wife doesn't have to wear tzitzit? Because the law of wearing tzitzit is only during the day. Your wife doesn't have to wear tefillin, again, same reason, only during the day.
What does the day have to do with?
That means that it's a time-bound mitzvah. So any mitzvah which is time-bound, a woman, that's an aseh, that is a positive commandment, is a woman does not have to do. So as an example.
Morning prayers is time bound.
They're obligated once a day.
That's why they're obligated once a day, correct. Now, according to some opinions, they're not obligated at all. Because
each one is technically...
Because the chiyuv, either way, because the chiyuv do, right? Doesn't matter, larger discussion.
Shabbat is not time bound to the time of...
Absolutely it is.
X.
Absolutely it is. Now, each time we find a mitzvat aseh, shazman grama, a time-bound mitzvah, that's positive in nature. So in other words, your wife does not have to eat in a sukkah. So you have a sukkah, there's not enough room for everybody. All the men eat in the sukkah. The table carries on into the living room. All the women eat in the living room.
Bring the ekels inside.
The opposite, by the way. They're the ones lounging in the AC. We're the ones struggling with the heat or the cold, right? But the point is, it's a mitzvah taseh, shazman grama. Anytime you have a mitzvah, a positive mitzvah, which is time-bound, women are absolved from that mitzvah. And if there's a reason why, if they are obligated in it, so we have to come up with a reason why they're obligated in it, because otherwise the rule doesn't make sense. Now, just two things I want to point out on this. Number one, that's the generally understood consensus of how we look at mitzvot that are time-bound with regards to women. That means that they're patur from all of them, unless there's a specific reason why. So therefore, every time we find that the halakha says that they have to, we ask, what do you mean? Time-bound mitzvah?
So why?
And we are why? We have to come up with an answer. Only one of the commentators says, actually, it's not a hard, fast rule. It's just generally the case. So it's not that you have to come up with a reason why. And if you don't come up with a reason why, they're patur. Okay? It's a general consensus. But the Gemara over here says, women are also obligated to mikra Megillah, even though it's a positive commandment. Okay? And it's time-bound. Why? Because they were also in the miracle. The commandment, the decree, the edict from Achashverosh was to wipe out men, women, and children. So therefore, since the women themselves were saved, so the mitzvah also applies to them. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, if that's the case, if that's how you're learning this case, so then the answer as to why a woman would be obligated in Purim would also extend to other cases. So as an example, a woman should also be obligated on Pesach. Why? Because they were also saved on Pesach from slavery. They are obligated on Pesach. Okay?
One thing I remember from elementary school.
Okay, right?
I didn't even know we got that far.
Right? So you look at it and you say, oh, similar. Gemara is exactly the same. Here they were saved. There they were saved. So they're obligated here. They're obligated there too. There's another way of understanding Afhen Hayu Ba'oto Anes, which means that they also were part of the miracle. Why? In the story of Megillah, who is the one that brings about the miracle? It's Esther. Mm-hmm. So it can't be that the women are the one that brought the miracle and they're going to be absolved from Pirsumei Nisa. Okay? Go back to Egypt. The women didn't make the miracle. So even though they were in the miracle, they didn't cause the miracle. So it depends on how you understand the words of the Gemara as to whether or not this logic would explain why they're obligated on Pesach.
They're obligated because
Beautiful, but
If
that's
it wasn't for the women, we wouldn't have.
That's not the same. Esther, it's not her zechut. She does the actual, she has the party. She literally enables the mitzvah.
Between Pesach and Sukkot, because Sukkot they're also on the mitzvah, but they're along for the ride.
They're along, but also in the story of Pesach, it's not the same. Afhen hayu be'oto hanes, that they were responsible for the miracle. They might have had the zechut for the miracle, but they didn't do the miracle. Okay?
It's just playing the role that Moshe played in
Exactly.
Egypt.
The way this would work is if instead of Moshe and Aaron, it was Miriam and Yocheved.
Because like I said, the one thing I remember, this is brought in Pesachim
Yeah.
as to why the women have to drink the 4 cups.
And by the way, this is what the Mefarashim talk about. How do we understand Afhen hayu be'oto hanes? Is it the same? Purim, Pesach, sometimes they're part of the miracle, sometimes they make the miracle happen. So I'm just saying, I'm pointing out that in this instance, in the instance of Purim, you have both interpretations. They were saved in the miracle, and they also caused the miracle. In the story of Chanukah, also, a woman has an obligation. Why? Because they were also saved. But in that story too, in the actual salvation, Yehudit played a part. She killed the general, Eliponi. She chopped his head off.
Got him drunk.
She got him drunk. She chopped his head off. Exactly. So since they were since she was part of the actual miracle, so then you have both interpretations of Afhen hayu be'oto hanes. Let's carry on. Now, by the way, just one other point I want to bring to your attention. If you take a look, it says, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says, Nashim chayavot, women are obligated. What do the words say? B'mikra Megillah, to read the Megillah. It doesn't say that they're obligated to hear the Megillah. Okay? Now, men are also obligated in Mikra Megillah. But there was a question as whether or not a woman, not only does she have an obligation to read, but can she also be motzi somebody?
Sounds very progressive.
Sounds very progressive, exactly. But there's some opinions that say that since the Gemara did not say that their obligation is to hear, but that their obligation is to read, so you see that they're also part of the mitzvah of reading the Megillah, and therefore there's a tzad to say that a woman could also be motzi a man in the reading of the Megillah.
They use the same word for men and women?
Mikra, yeah. Okay? So that is also a second part of these couple of lines. The Gemara asks, okay, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi taught, Purim shechal liot b'Shabbat, if you have Purim that falls on Shabbat, as we mentioned already earlier, this can no longer happen now that we have a set calendar, but when they were declaring Rosh Chodesh based on the sight of the moon, and it was dependent on how long it took them to get to the Beit Din, and when the Beit Din saw them, etc., etc. So in certain scenarios, Purim could actually fall out on Shabbat. Okay, today that can't be the case. But back then, let's say you have Purim shechal liot b'Shabbat, Shoalim v'doshim b'Inyano shel Yom. On the day of Shabbat, we gather together and the rabbi talks about, he asks the questions, he answers the questions about the laws of the day, what happened on the day, etc., in the Beit HaKnesset. Now, what does that actually mean? What does this mean? That we're doing this. We already mentioned earlier that when you have Purim on Shabbat, do you read the Megillah on Shabbat? No. Right? When do you move the Megillah to? You move it before, right? You move it earlier. So since that's the case, that you're moving it earlier, so what do you do on Purim day, which is no longer Purim day?
Talk about it.
So the Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi is saying that there's a mitzvah on the day, an obligation, to read and to talk about the halachot of the day, to mention the miracle on the day, etc., okay? Why? Because since today is the real day of Purim, and the only reason why you moved Purim is because it was Shabbat, right? So therefore, really today, how are we spreading the word of Purim on this day? How are we celebrating Purim on the actual day? Now, the truth is, it was bothering me when I first learned this Gemara. Why is Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi asking this question only on Shabbat, where you moved it to Thursday? What about every time? Purim falls on Wednesday. When do they read the Megillah, the people in the villages? They move it back to Monday. So, but it's not on the day.
But they're just reading Megillah. What about everything else?
Because
All the other
they're
mitzvot they could do on that day.
No, but on the actual day, what are they doing?
They're preparing to
Shalach
serve
manot,
other people.
matarot lev,
Correct. But in terms of Pirsumei Nisa, they don't have the Megillah. So they should say it. The answer is no. No. The answer is that when the Mikra Megillah moves, the day of Mikra Megillah and Pirsumei Nisa moves with it. Shabbat is different. Shabbat is not that we instituted that this is the day of the reading of the Megillah for all the people in the villages. It's just that we can't read it on Shabbat, so we shoved it to the nearest possible day. So therefore, the day of Shabbat is really the day of Purim. So we celebrate Purim by way of talking about the laws of Purim. By the way, it's just a super interesting halakha. What would happen if you came to a place where they did not have a kosher Megillah? Would you read the Megillah, yes or no?
Yeah.
You'd read the Megillah. You're not allowed to make a beracha if you're reading it out of the book. Only make the beracha if you're reading it from the Megillah. What would I say? This Gemara would come into play in a place where a person didn't have a Megillah. So Shoalim v'Dorshin, you would read on the day, talk about the halachot of the day, mention the mitzvah of the miracle of the day, because you didn't have Mikra Megillah. Okay, let's carry on. The Gemara says, hold up. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi just told you that on Purim, you have to discuss the holiday and say over what happened on the day. Ma'irya Purim. Why do you specify Purim? That halakha is true about every single holiday. Afilu Yom Tov Nami, even regular Yom Tov, same halakha. The Tanya, we learned in the Braita, Moshe Tiken Lahem L'Yisrael, Moshe instituted a law for the Jewish people. Shiyu Shoalim v'Doshim Binyano Shel Yom, Hilchot Pesach b'Pesach, Hilchot Atzeret b'Atzeret, Hilchot Chag b'Chag. So on the day of Pesach, what do? You talk about the laws of Pesach and what happened on the day. What do you do on Atzeret? You talk about Shavuot and what happened on the day and the halachot of cheesecake. What do you do on what's it called? On Sukkot? That was a joke. There are no halachot of cheesecake. Sukkot, what do? You have someone talk about the miracle of the Ananei Kabod and the fact that we have an obligation to sit in it, how tall, women are chayav, not chayav, etc., etc., inside, outside, all the laws that are attendant to that day. So we know already from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu that on the day of a holiday, what do you have? You have a review of the laws and the story of the day. So therefore, when Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi came along and told you that you know what you do on Purim, if it falls out on Shabbat, on that day, you shoalim v'dorshin. You do that on every holiday. Ma'irya Purim, why did he specify Purim? The Gemara answers, we needed to tell it to you, because I would have thought, Nigzor mishum de Rabbah, kamash malan. We did not yet see what Rabbah says. We already know what Rabbah says because we had to understand earlier why we don't read on Shabbat. On Shabbat, the Megillah, we put it aside. Never mind the laws of Muktzeh, which are born out of the fact that it's not used, right? But we do not read Megillah on Shabbat. Why? We're worried that a guy's going to take his Megillah, walk through the streets of Reshut Rabin, carrying, transgress the laws of Shabbat to carry his Megillah to go to the rabbi's house. So the rabbi will tell him how to read the Megillah, or the rabbi will read it to him, okay? Since that's the case, similar to shofar, what do we say? Anytime there's the mitzvah of shofar, of Megillah on Shabbat, we don't do Megillah, we don't do Shabbat. And you're correct, it would then potentially become mukseh. I don't believe the Megillah would become mukseh because you're still able to learn from it.
Are the laws in a war?
Shofar becomes mukseh because now it has no use. But Megillah still has a use.
Could you carry it in a walled city, or is there a roof things?
Once we made the gezerah not to do it on Shabbat, we don't do it on Shabbat anywhere.
Any place.
Yes.
Now, if Shushan Purim falls out on Saturday.
Wait, before we get distracted, hold on, before we get distracted. The Gemara says, so since we said that you don't read on Shabbat when it's Shabbat, because we're worried you might carry the Megillah, we also thought that you might not have given a shiur on the Megillah on Shabbat, because the same thing might happen. The rabbi is going to give a class on the Megillah. What does every guy do? Yank said his Megillah. Why are we doing the class? Because you couldn't read it. Why could you read it? Because you're going to carry it. So now you made a class on Megillah. The guy brings his big Megillah that he won in the Safra thing, in the Safra raffle. He comes to shul very happy, and we make sure we may as well have read the Megillah now. So therefore, I would have thought that there's another Gezerah, Kamash Malan. We learn that's not, well, we're not worried about that enough to institute the law, and therefore Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi taught us that even on Purim, that this might happen, still we read the halakha, we teach the halachot of the day on the day, as everybody knows. Okay, question, yes.
Shushan Purim now, if it falls out on Saturday, they read the Megillah Sunday, or they read it Friday?
You can't extend it.
We don't go back. We don't go forward. We don't go past the date. We always go before the date. Okay?
Because now Shushan Purim could still fall out on Saturday.
Shushan Purim meaning the 16th? Which Shushan Purim?
15. Wolf City.
So the Shushan Purim has become a euphemism for the day after Mikra Megillah. So that's what I was asking you. You mean the 15th day.
Yes.
15th day can still fall on Shabbat.
Right.
So the 15th day, guys, won't read the Megillah. The 14th day can never fall on Shabbat, so it's irrelevant. But back then that it could, it would be the same discussion. Okay? Let's...
So
Yeah.
sorry. Does it just so happen that the 15th never is on Shabbat, or
No, it could be on Shabbat.
No,
I
the
think last year
14th
was.
No, the 14th is never on Shabbat. Once we arrange the
Purim is never on
calendar,
Shabbat?
today, Purim will, from now that we have a set calendar,
Okay.
even though the date moves back and forth different days of the week, it will never fall that the 14th is on Shabbat.
Because it's moved.
How do they do that? Either because they set the calendar up in a way where that is the way it works,
Like,
you know?
Lo Adu Rosh Hashanah will never be on a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday.
Sometimes it's mathematically driven, right? And sometimes it's consciously set so that we don't have a scenario where we're pushing it off. Okay?
So
Hillel HaKatan.
so they'll just add another day to the last, like they'll have a 32nd day.
Sorry?
How do they do that?
Like let's use this for example. They'll have a December 32nd instead of
AI.
letting it rotate naturally.
Correct. They would have they arranged that the months are full and short, full and short, full and short, which was not the case back then. Back then, right, it would just depend on the moon.
All that trouble for Shabbat on Purim.
No, it's just that the way that I'm setting up, the way that in however many months, there are however many holidays. So you just had to arrange the months in a way where the holidays were avoiding Shabbat. So those were things that sometimes we avoided. But certain holidays don't have to avoid Shabbat. Like as an example, we have Yom Kippur on Shabbat. We have Rosh Hashanah on Shabbat.
Right.
But only the first day. You can never have a second day of
Correct.
Of Rosh Hashanah. Shabbat.
Correct. Now, again, there are many cases where there are cases where the first day of Sukkot falls out on Shabbat. What does that mean when the first day of Sukkot falls out on Shabbat? We lose Lulav and Etrog Deoraita. So it wasn't just that so why didn't they just arrange around that? See, so that's part of the mathematical impossibilities, and as well the fact that the Hillel HaKatan was ensuring that the date would work on a 19-year cycle, which was infinitely repeatable.
Wow.
That was the idea. He created a 19-year calendric cycle that would be infinitely repeatable, so that there would never be a problem with the calendar ever being off. Okay? Now,
Hillel HaKatan said it years ago?
2,000 years ago. Hillel HaKatan is not Hillel HaZaken.
Oh, so this is just in perpetuity.
After the time of the Bet HaMikdash being destroyed, and the Bet Din was no longer able to ascertain and set it, so we already developed a calendar. Not 2,000 years ago, less than that, but
How many year
less than
runway
2,000
do we
years.
have?
Sorry?
How many year runway do we have?
Forever.
Forever.
No, you're not understanding.
Oh, it goes in a loop.
The calendar is a 19-year cycle,
It's a 19-year cycle.
which is
I
why
missed that part.
your Hebrew and English birthday falls out on the same date every 19 years.
Got it.
Because 19 years later, the English day and the Hebrew day are exactly the same day.
Got it.
Okay? Because that's its cycle. All right. And it was adding in, you have to understand this, guys. He was also adding into the cycle the Shana Me'uberet. I was born on Chaf Chet Adar Aleph.
You must be
You
like
skipped
12,
the
you must be
birthday.
like 8.
So my birthday, yeah, exactly. I'm something like, no, I'm not 8, but it comes up 3 years every 19 years. So 3 times every
It was your fourth birthday.
every 19 years. Yeah, right. I think that's correct. Right. So that means that you if I'm 45, I've been
6.5.
6.5. Something like that.
What's the significance of 19?
Shouldn't be drinking and
Mathematic.
It's just how it lines up.
It lines up. Yeah, in a way where it can come back full circle and it will be exact.
I'd love to see his paperwork.
This is like
like a beautiful mind.
this is that's exactly what I was thinking. By the way, Ada's wife was going Majnun. I'm killing myself with the post-it notes. Okay, just 1 second. The last thing I want to point out is that working into the calendar is not just the dates of the month, of the year, of the month of the. It was also in relation to the solar calendar. So he added in the exact, precise leap months, which leap years, how that plays out, and then he worked exactly. Okay, so now that we understand all that, now we're back to where we were. That 14th will never fall out on Shabbat. 15th can fall out on Shabbat, in which case there's a mitzvah.
I think that backstory
You guys-
is very important.
You guys need to mute if there's talking around you, okay? Okay, the Gemara continues, okay? Kamash malan. Therefore, Rabbah taught us this halakha about Purim so that we would not think that that law would not apply. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi teaches, Chayav Adam Nekrot Megillah, a person has an obligation to read the Megillah Balayla, U'lishanotah bayom, and to read it bayom. Now this word lishanotah is going to throw the students off for 1 second. Shneemar, like the pasuk says, Elohai yakra yomam v'lo ta'aneh v'layla v'lo dum yali. This pasuk is taken from Tehillim. The pasuk, the perek of Tehillim is the perek of Tehillim of Lamnatseach Alayelet HaShahar. That perek of Tehillim was we read it on Purim, but why do we read it on Purim? Because it was written, it's attributed to Esther. So Esther called herself the Ayelet HaShahar, okay? Now, since that's the case, when she's describing what happened in that time, she said, Elohai, my God, Ekra Yomam, I call out during the day, v'lo ta'aneh, you don't answer. V'layla v'lo dum yali. And in the nighttime, there was never any quiet time for me in the night. I cried out at night as well. So you see, they were crying during the day and they were crying during the night. So therefore, when there was a salvation, they were saved from crying in the day and also saved from crying in the night. Therefore, the celebration of the miracle takes place in the nighttime and also in the daytime, based on the pasuk in Tehillim, which is attributed to Esther. That's how the Gemara explains of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi's understanding. Savur mina lemikray balayla ulemitna matnitan dida bi'imama. The Gemara says that at the time when he said this idea that a person has the obligation to read the Megillah at night, ulishanota bayom, the word lishanota, its root is the word shana, right? Shoneh. Kol hashoneh halachot b'chol yom. What does shoneh mean? To learn. Okay, that's what shoneh means. Except that shoneh is a specific type of learning, which is usually attributable to learning mishnayot. Like as an example, the Gemara talks about a person who was kara v'shana. Kara means to read. What does shana mean?
To learn.
Also, to learn. But the word shana, its root is the same root as the word mishnah. So kara, read, refers to mikra. Whenever we say mikra, we're referring to, with shnayim mikra, mikra means the psukim of Tanakh, the psukim. Right. Shana means the recitation of mishnayot. So therefore, when he said, a person has an obligation to read Megillah at night, likrota balayla, ulishanota bayom, they understood lishanota means to learn the Mishnayot of it during the daytime. So they thought that the idea was that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was teaching that read Megillah at night and during the daytime learn the Mishnayot of Masechet Megillah. Okay? The Gemara then corrected that initial mistaken understanding. Amar lahu Rabbi Yirmiyah explained to them, the students, Ledidi mifreshali mine de Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Rabbi Chia bar Abba said to me explicitly, I heard it from his own mouth. He explained the words of Yeshua ben Levi to mean kegon da amri inchi, like the way people speak when they say e'evor pasheta, I'm going to go over the parasha, da v'itnaya, and I will repeat it. Now in Aramaic, oftentimes we interchange the letter shin and the letter taf. Every time we see a Mishnah, what do we say? Tana. Tana is really Shana. That's a Mishnah. You understand? So a lot of times the taf and the shin are interchangeable. So what are we seeing over here? The way people say, I'm going to go over the parasha, v'itnaya is like v'ishnaya. So you see the ishnaya or lishanota can mean explicit, just mean repetition of something, as opposed to only reading Mishnayot. So therefore, he explained to them, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi meant you have to read it at night, in the nighttime, and then say it again in the day. Itmar Nami, we learned as well that this is the case. Amar Rabbi Chebo, name Rabbi Chebo Amar Ula, in the name of Ula, Ula Bira'ah. By the way, who remembers Ula Bira'ah from Masechet Ta'anit? Do you guys remember him? We had Ula Bira'ah, where he was one of the people that was studying, and there was someone else that was studying, and they called the other guy. They said he's more chashuv, and Ula Bira'ah says, "Oh yeah, test me. You don't think I know? I know. If I don't know, I'm going to jump off of the right. If give me a question, if I can't answer it, that was Ula Bira'ah. Okay.
Oh, this is the guy that disappeared for a long period of time.
No, that's Chonia Ma'agal.
Give back reserve cut now.
So what you got?
You have to give back reserve cut now.
Yeah.
Okay. Chayav Adam Likut Megillah Balayla. Ula Bira'ah said, and Rabbi Chelbo quoted him, person has the obligation to read the Megillah Balayla in the nighttime, and read it again during the day. Shneimar, like the pasuk says, L'mani zamecha kavod, in order that I can sing your kavod, your honor, v'lo yidom, and I will not remain silently. I will not remain silent. Hashem Elokai leolam udeka. God, you are my God. Leolam udeka, forevermore will I praise you. Now, again, this Mizmor Tehillim is not the same Mizmor Tehillim of Lamatzeach Alayat Hashachar. So what's the connection between this pasuk and there? Also, in this Mizmor Tehillim, which is chapter Lamed, we have a Braita that tells us that was also talking about the story of Purim. And what does it say over here? Leman yizamecha kavod, in order that I should sing your praises, v'lo yidom, and I will not be silenced. Leman yizamecha kavod is referring to the daytime. V'lo yidom, and I will not be silent, is a time when people are ordinarily silent. So that's the nighttime. So again, you see that we were dedicating, we were saying that we're going to speak God's praises in the night, in the daytime. V'lo dum yali, and I will not remain silent at nighttime. So also I'm going to say it at the nighttime. Just a little thing to point out. If you look back at the first pasuk, which was in the Mizmor of Lamatzech Ayelet HaShachar, what did it say over there? Esther said, in the daytime we cried, and in the nighttime, look again, lo dumi ali. You see the same word. We were not silenced. So both times the word dumia or the word velo yidom appears to include the nighttime. So now we have a mitzvah to read Megillah in the nighttime and to read Megillah in the daytime. There's a machloket between the Sephardim and the Ashkenazim. What are we trying to say over here? Okay, this is very important.
Required to read the Megillah at night and by day.
Everybody agrees that that's what the Gemara over here is saying. Excellent, right? Why? Why is that? Why is that the case? Why is that the case? Because we know to read the Megillah is already part of the actual Megillah. In the Megillah itself, it says that you have to read it, right? But the Megillah itself doesn't say you have to read it at night. Where are we getting you have to read it at night, or at least 2 times? We're learning it from a pasuk in Tehillim. So is that a revelatory learning of pasuk? And what we're saying is that the original enactment was day and night? Or are we saying that they said, from there we know you have to read it once? Now we're instituting a newer, a later rabbinic injunction that obligates two learning readings. Which would, exactly, that's the nafkamina la halacha. So Ashkenazim make Shechianu nighttime and daytime. Sephardim only make it nighttime. In the daytime we don't make Shechianu.
So why would they say it in the morning?
Because if you learn that the Gemara over here is using a pasuk that's revealing that the original takana was that way, so then initially they made 2 mitzvot, a nighttime mitzvah and a daytime mitzvah. Anytime it's a separate mitzvah, exactly. Then you make 2 Shechianus, okay?
But it says repeating, so it's like the first one is the...
It's just telling you have to read it again. But it could be that you have to repeat it, mandated by law, by halakha. Okay? So what do we do now? We read it in the nighttime, we do Shechianu, but we make an announcement that you should have in mind when you say Shechianu in the nighttime, that's going on all the on the Megillah tomorrow, which we're not going to say Shechianu, and also on... Exactly, on all the other mitzvot of the day of Mishloach Manot, Matanot Levionim, Seuda, yes.
But even if it's repeated Deoraita, isn't that like Lulav?
No Deoraita. None of this Deoraita.
Even if it was,
yeah, then
you still wouldn't say Shechianu the second time if it was repeated, like Lulav.
If it's an extension of the same mitzvah, no Shechianu.
So it's a separate mitzvah.
A separate mitzvah is when you have a Shechianu.
Day, it would be like if the Lulav you had to shake it by night and by day.
Exactly.
I got it.
Right. So here, Megillah, and Lulav actually is only Deoraita on the first day, Lav Etrog. Okay? Right. Now, the last thing I want to point out is that it could actually be, so which Megillah is the main one? So most people think, okay, Sfaradim hold, the night one is the main one. Ashkenazim hold, the day one is the main one. I don't know that even though we disagree on whether or not you say 2 Shechianus, if that's true. Why?
If what's true?
If that we hold that the more important Mikra Megillah is the nighttime.
Okay.
Let me give you an example. Let's say a person has a babysitter for their wife. The babysitter says, I can't come both, I can only come one. Which one do you choose? Nighttime or daytime?
But for
Well, there
us, I would imagine it's the nighttime because of the Shechianu.
Sorry?
For us, for Sephardim.
Yes, but I'm just
So you're
saying,
going before
forget
that.
forget the beracha.
Right, so I don't know.
We would say nighttime.
So you'd imagine it would be nighttime, but that might not be the case. It might be that the reason why we say Shechianu at night is because this is the first one. Even if it's less important, I can make it now and have in mind that everything else comes along with it.
Can you fulfill your obligations for the other mitzvot at the nighttime?
Sorry?
The other mitzvot where you have Matana Yavanim, Mishteh, and Mishloach Manot, those have to be the next
Those
day,
have to
no?
be in the daytime, yes.
Ah.
The Mishnah Berurah writes that there's also an idea to have a mishtek tzat in the nighttime. We're going to already get to that when we come to the laws of the Seudah, okay? But there's an idea to have a mishtek tzat.
Do it anyway, fast.
Sorry?
Do it anyway, fast.
Yeah, but that's not a feast. Like, let's say as an example, you go home and you have soup, because that's what you like to eat after, right? But a mishteh also means wine. You're supposed to have some at night. Why? How many seudot did Esther make? Two. So if we're commemorating the miracle, you gotta have two. The first seudah also was less important, right? It was just a setup for the next one. But he says there's a mitzvah to have, and not to go crazy in the nighttime, but to have something also at the nighttime. There's no laws to the seudah, interestingly enough.
Sehudah doesn't qualify if you have to have wine, or a Sehudah is inclusive of wine.
The mishteh is supposed to be a mishteh yain.
Got it.
That's what she had, okay? But there's no obligation. It's not like a deoraita where the obligation of the day is, there's a din simcha, and since there's v'samachta b'chagecha, en simcha ela basar v'yayin, you have to have meat and wine. Now, what if a person hates meat or hates wine? The halakha poskim say they don't have to have it, by the way. You should just know that, okay? Or whatever, because it's not simcha for you, all right? Now, so I just wanted to point this out. It could be that the reason why we're making shechianu is not because it's more important, but just because it comes first. But it might be that we also hold that the one that's more important is the daytime, but it's not a full limud. So therefore, now, there's one other thing I wanted to point out, okay? The two approaches in the Gemara that prove nighttime and daytime are not the same. What's the difference between the first proof and the second proof, nighttime, daytime?
Let's review what both of the proofs are.
One was we were silent at night, but we cried in the day.
Yeah, that's Esther. That's the first opinion. Right. Second opinion is
and we repeat it.
That I praise you in the daytime and I praise you in the nighttime.
Right.
Jack, you want to shut the door for a minute? Sure. Yeah? What's the difference between these two opinions?
The source of where they come from?
Both of them are in Tehillim. Neither of them is in the Megillah.
One is we're doing both.
And one of them is you did one.
We did one and
you did not do.
Yeah, we did not do.
What do you mean?
So the second one we did, we prayed both times.
Yeah.
And then the first
the other one was we cried both times.
You cried and you were silent.
Hashem answers in the beginning, and then we cry again.
The first limud is about the fact that we were crying, and now because we're doing the Megillah, and we were saved from the crying of the nighttime and crying of the daytime, so we read Megillah in the nighttime and the daytime because the pasuk in Tehillim describes a crying in the day and a crying at night. Okay, so the first one is that we're doing it twice because we were saved from two cryings. The second one explicitly says, we're talking about Purim because we learned that in the Braita, right? In the Psikta. And since it's talking about Purim, and it says explicitly, Leman yizamecha kavod, that we sang your kavod in the daytime. And in the nighttime, we sang your kavod as well. It's almost as if the second pasuk is telling you, you have to do this here and you have to do this here. And the first one is like learning, like we should do this to commemorate the crying, and we should do it a second time to commemorate the second type of crying.
One is we should commemorate, one is you should do this.
One is this is what we do. Le'ma'an yizamecha kavod v'lo yidom. The other one is, well, we cried at night and we cried in the day. And therefore, logically, to celebrate the miracle, we're going to counteract both of those two things. One of these is a much more direct, and I wonder if the machloket, Sephardim Ashkenazim, was which one of these proofs we were each going with. For them, that both of them were obligatory, right? That came from the second pasuk, the Lema Yizamecha Kavod, and that's why they make two shechianus. And maybe for us, again, I don't have a proof that this is the case. Maybe for us, we went with the first proof, which says that it's commemorative of two different cryings, but that doesn't mean that there were two specific commandments. Do it here, do it here. Okay? I think we're gonna. The next is a new thing. No more Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Do we have the time to finish the next one? What do you think? We have 10 more minutes?
I'm good.
Yeah. Okay, let's go. The Gemara continues. We had this idea in the Mishnah that says that the villages, if they were reading on a day that was not the gathering day, not the marketplace day, what did we do? We moved back to the last marketplace day, which is either a Monday or a Thursday. Amar Rabbi Chanina said, the reason why we were mekil on the kefarim, to go back to the day of the marketplace, was in order that they should be able to give the water, the food to the people that lived in the city. Okay? And if they were busy on the day before reading the Megillah, then they would not be able to provide everybody the things that they needed until the actual day of the Megillah, and then it would be too late for them to prepare their mishloach manot, their seudah. So therefore, we allowed them to move backwards in time to go to a Monday or to a Thursday before, in order that they should be able to help the people of the towns. Is that clear? Yeah. Now, I just want to point out one thing. What does this mean, hekilu? What does the word hekilu mean? Or mekil, or a kula? It means a leniency.
They were lenient.
Lenient. Is it lenient that you told me, don't read it on Wednesday, read it on Monday? Is that lenient?
No, it sounds stringent.
It's not lenient or stringent. I had to read it on one day. You told me, don't read it on this day. Read it on this day.
It is
I'm
lenient.
giving you options.
Why is it lenient?
I'm giving you options.
No option. If you were supposed to read it on Wednesday, once we say makdimim liyom haKnisa, you have to read it on Monday.
Why can't I read it on Wednesday?
Because that was the takana.
You're not going to get a minyan.
Oh, so Ray's already snagging the answer. He's kitonet pasiming us. Let's go. Why is it a hekilu? Why is it a leniency? It's not a leniency. The answer is, one of the reasons we said is that they did not know how to read the Megillah, which would mean that if they had to read it on Wednesday, and that's not a market day, they'd have to come in on Wednesday and on Monday.
And Thursday.
Not Thursday. They would come in on Thursday because of work.
Right.
But there would be an extra day that they need to come in because they don't have the reader if it was on a Wednesday. So that's why we're calling it a kula. That we allowed them anyway when they were on Monday.
You're looping it into when they were going anyway.
Anyway,
They
exactly.
would have to come in Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, as opposed to
Exactly.
Monday, Thursday.
Exactly. Okay? So it's important that you understand that word is already going to shed light on the way that we're seeing what's actually happening, but the Gemara maybe does not yet know or has not yet realized that fact.
But what if they can get a reader on Wednesday in their own town? They can't read it on Wednesday because there's already another day.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay? The Gemara says that's why we were mekil on them for the people in the town. Lememra, says the Gemara, are you trying to tell me the takanta de krachin, that this takana that they made to move it back to Monday was a rule that we instituted for the kirachim, for the towns, and it wasn't something that we instituted for the villages? V'atanan, it says in the Braita, chal liyot b'sheni. If it falls out on Monday, kefarim v'ayarot gedolot, the villages and the city and the big cities, korim bo bayom, they read on that Monday. V'im ita, and if you hold that the reason why we did this was kidei sheyasapku, in order that they bring food to the town. That means if the reason why we made this gezerah of making it earlier is for the townspeople, then on a day or on a year where the day of Megillah falls out for the villages on a gathering day, on a Monday, what are they going to do? They're going to come in on that day and they're going to read it on that day, which means that they're not going to be available for the people to give the food for the people. So that means that that it can't be that we instituted this as a benefit for the townspeople, because on a time when it falls out that their reading is on a marketplace day, the people in town, the townsfolk, don't have the villagers free to deal with their needs the day before. V'imita, and if you hold it, that's the case. Likdimu li Yom HaKinisa, let them go back from Monday to the previous Yom HaKinisa, and that way they'll be free on the Monday, the day before Purim, for the townspeople to be available to provide for their needs. What would that mean? That would mean that they were moving back from Monday to the previous Thursday.
So now you're moving them a week back.
Answers the Gemara, what Rafi's saying, Havelhu Asara. Let's think. Monday would be 14. Okay? What would Sunday be? 13. Shabbat, 12. Friday, 11. Thursday's 10. What did we say when you're allowed to read the Megillah? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So, Havilu Asara, the Asara lo tekin Rabbanan. So your question on me is not a good question. You know why? Because they don't have an option to go back to Thursday. Says the Gemara, Tashma, come in here. I have another question. And you're already probably guessing the other question. Where would we prove it? From the other marketplace day.
The beginning.
If it falls out on Thursday. Let's go through it. Chaliot b'chamishi. What if the day that they're supposed to read falls out on Thursday? Kifarim v'ayarot gedolot korim bo bayom. They read on that day. V'imita likdemu li yom hakinisa. Let them go back to Monday. Now let's count. Thursday is 14. Wednesday is 13. Tuesday is 12. Monday is 11. You're still good. So how come if it falls out on Thursday, they don't move to the Monday? If the whole reason is to take care of the townspeople, why do we want them busy on the Thursday reading the Megillah for themselves? Let's move them back to the previous Monday, which actually still fits in the 11. What does that prove? It proves
That's not the real reason.
that's not the real reason, that it's not for the townspeople. The Gemara answers, no, we don't push from one Yom HaKinisa back to a prior Yom HaKinisa. Why? Since there's a case of Yom Kinisa to Yom Kinisa not working, i.e., if it falls out on Monday, and then we go back to Thursday, so that's not a good day to read, we don't want the people getting mixed up. So we made a law that's always relevant. Always go back to Yom HaKinisa. In a scenario where that's not going to work, then that doesn't work. So therefore, this Gemara, again, this is not a good proof to knock out the opinion of Rabbi Chanina that this was a takana for the people of the towns of the townsfolk. Tashma, the Gemara offers a final knockout. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Ematai when the only time we make this rule that we make them go on the marketplace day, that we make it earlier to Monday and Thursday, is in a place where they go in on Mondays and Thursdays for marketplace day. What if there's a place, on a place where there's no marketplace day on Monday and Thursday? So in a village that lives next to a town that does not have marketplace days on Monday and Thursday, okay? Let's say as an example, in that area, the townspeople come to the villagers. They very into what do they call it? Farm to table, farmers market. Right? They pay more to go to the farm to pick it, smell the manure. Right? They feel like they're getting it better. Okay? They don't want to go to Wegmans. They don't want to go to Whole Food. They want to get ripped off at the farmers market. Azaku Baruch. Okay? So in a scenario like that, the day they do not move back to the Monday or the Thursday. Because there's no marketplace day. Says the Gemara, if the whole reason here was for the kirachim, was for the townspeople to have them be available, then again, they're not going to be available. We would have made them do it even in a case where there's no marketplace day. That proves that Rabbi Chanina is not saying the right reason. It's not that we gave them an ability to go earlier because of the townspeople. The Gemara says, no, lo tema, you're reading it a little bit wrong. We have to correct the nusach. It doesn't say, Kedesh yisapku mayim mazon, not in order that they prepare the food and the drink for the people. Ela ema mipnei shemisapki mayim mazon lachem shebekachim. Because, not in order, which makes it sound like we're doing it for the townspeople, but rather, you should read it, the reason why we let them go on Monday and Thursday is because they do that. Two ways of understanding it. One way of understanding it is that we rewarded them. We allowed them to not have to come in twice, mipnei, because this is what they do. This is what they're going to be doing for the people. So we're happy to let them come and read it on an available day within the 11 to 15 segment so that they can do this for the townspeople, and we're going to give them a reward. The other opinion is, no, since they always come in and they always do this nice thing where they take care of the townspeople and they bring them all their goods to the market, so therefore we rewarded them by not needing to come back on another day, and we allowed them to use that day that they're doing a favor for the townspeople to also fulfill their obligation for Mikra Megillah. Okay, let's stop here. We'll carry on Dalid Amud Bet on Sunday. Azaku Baruch.